Hello and welcome to the Drop-In CEO podcast. My name is Deb Coviello and I have the pleasure of introducing to you today Jill Walker. Jill, for the past 3 decades, has owned a very successful business where she has trained and consulted across Europe, the US, and most recently in Asia, New Zealand, and Australia. And her focus for the last 2 decades has been ensuring that organizations benefit from effective and profitable CRM implementations. She is known as the CRM Success Catalyst and has an educational approach to CRM implementations. And she has a tremendous commitment to ongoing professional development. Jill is known for her ability to get to the nub of an issue, and this, combined with her communication skills, enables her to solve problems and to guide people to a successful solution. So I'm very excited for this conversation. Jill, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deb. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so I wanted to, I'm actually really excited about this conversation. So Jill and I were recently introduced to each other, and it was absolutely clear from the beginning, she is outstanding in her craft, technically competent in the customer relationship management field. And no doubt she's helped companies be amazingly successful. But when we came to the point of learning about her insights and what she's observed in business, the way businesses have approached implementing technology solutions has had some challenges, and it's through her insight and leadership she has found better ways of implementing technology solutions that'll ultimately get them to greater success. So I'm so looking forward to hearing your insights. But Jill, could you please share with us a little bit about your business journey and how have you arrived at the work that you're doing now that has the greatest impact?
Certainly, Deb. I think one of the things that has really hit me in doing what I do is that in many ways, the way we approach software implementation is still much as it was 30 odd years ago. And the problem with that is that 30 odd years ago, if an organization wanted a software program, whether it was something to help with CRM or anything else, what that program does is not that important. But what they had to do was develop whatever that was from the ground up. So they would have their meetings, do whatever, come up with some form of scope, and that might have been a good scope, it might not. And that scope was then sent by some means or other to a technical development team. And because you're starting from nothing, imagine starting a picture from a piece of paper, you can have whatever you want. Nowadays, of course, we don't start from nothing. Whether we're doing a CRM implementation, an ERP implementation, a new website for an organization, a learning management system, you name it, it really doesn't matter what the project is. We are starting with an existing product. In my case, most of the time, that is Microsoft Dynamics 365. But it could be a WordPress website, it could be a Salesforce CRM system, it could be a Joomla website, it could be an SAP ERP system. The point is, it is an existing product. And the chances are that existing product will meet something of the order of 80% of your requirements. If you just installed Dynamics 365 or SAP or whatever the other products that we're talking about and did nothing more, you've probably got close to 80% of what you need. And it is that final 20% that gives you the specifics for your organization. So it's that 20% that is your data, your processes, your look and feel, and so on and so forth. I liken this to buying a ready-made birthday cake, and we've probably all done this. Go down to the bakery, you choose, you say, I'll have that chocolate mud cake there, but my husband's name is Peter and he's 50 next birthday. So can you put happy 50th birthday, Peter, and some candles, some red candles because he's a Liverpool supporter, or whatever the story might be. Now that's great. And Peter is probably going to love that cake. However, if you said to the shop, I want that chocolate cake, but actually I don't want chocolate, I want it to be a carrot cake. And I don't want it to be a birthday cake, I want it to be something else. They're going to look at you like you've got rocks in your head. And to be quite honest, you probably have got rocks in your head. Because while there's nothing wrong with a carrot cake, or you don't, if you want a carrot cake, you don't start with a chocolate cake.
Exactly.
If you want a carrot cake, you make a carrot cake, or you go to somewhere that will sell you a carrot cake, and that's your start point. Now, when we look at these technology implementations, people do the equivalent of wanting the chocolate cake to be converted to a carrot cake. And the reason for that is they don't do that basic education. When we start talking about birthday cakes, it's very simple. Everyone, I'm sure everybody listening to this conversation will know that you do have rocks in your head if you go down to the baker and ask them to convert the chocolate cake to a carrot cake. But if I had $1 for every time somebody has taken a technology and then wanted to bend and break it in some other way, I'd be on the beach in Hawaii not doing this.
So how do we change businesses and their thought processes to approach their implementations or conversions of systems in a different way?
The answer, I feel very strongly, is education, and to undertake some training. And we're not talking about weeks and weeks and weeks. I'm not talking about teaching users all of the technology. I am talking about getting some of the key subject matter experts or the leads from the key areas of whichever parts of the business will be most involved in the project, take them through a few days, and it could be as little as one day, overview training of the solution before any changes are done. And make it very clear that this training that we're doing at this point is the vanilla technology. This is what you've got without your data, without configuration, without customization. This is the bare technology, and this is what you've got already. So this is the stage where we're showing people, you know, here, customer, this is what our standard chocolate mud cake looks like. And then we can take that cake and we can put red icing, white icing, blue icing, pink icing. We can put whatever name you like. We can put silver candles, gold candles, pink candles, blue candles. We can put frills around the edge. We can do whatever. But this is what you're starting from. And this is where you head off the idea of, I want chocolate cake, but really I want it to have carrots in it.
So I'm curious here because, again, it sounds so simple and fundamental. You start with the leadership and talk to them about, this is what you're going to get. This is what the system is going to do for you. But so often leaders may be not interested. This is a technology implementation. Why do I need to understand all the bells and whistles? I simply want my customers to have a good experience. I want my people on the front line to be able to have an efficient system. Do you find that they're not engaged when you try to provide that upfront?
They are. It is very much that they want to get to the end point.
Yeah.
They're not interested in the steps, the essential steps from where you are to where you need to get to. So
why is it, how do you, this is really an interesting conversation because I've seen so many companies want to implement a shiny penny, a new technology, or they know they need it, but they're simply not interested in the details. And at the end, and I know you have statistics, it can be very painful. And so,
It is.
yeah, so I mean, why should the leaders be listening up front before you venture on this cake and want to convert it or customize it to their needs? Why is it so important that they listen at the beginning?
It's important because if they don't understand what they've got to begin with, they will make poor decisions. And I think that's the area that we need to get to. There is also something that I see frighteningly often, a missing piece in this whole puzzle is an overall solution architect. So when we're working in this whole field of software implementation, there is a large number of different skills that are needed. And I think one of the key ones that gets omitted is the solution architect. So then what we get is we get leaders from the client organization who won't do the 1 or 2 days education, so not a huge amount that I've talked about, and then they bring in developers.
Yeah.
And I actually have a poster that I use on some of my material, Beware the Curse of the CRM Developer. And I use that not because I dislike developers, but because it's too much of a catch-all term. This idea of a developer boils down to anybody with more technical skill than the leaders that we're talking to.
Yes.
Now, that these leaders in the main haven't even done this 1 or 2 day overview training, having more knowledge about the product in question than these leaders is not hard.
So
the stories that I will use is the idea that we live in a house, you do, we do, and so on. Let's imagine that life circumstances being what they are, the house, our house, not that we live together, we live 14 hours apart, but never mind. But our house is too small for whatever reason. And so we've decided that we need the house to be made bigger. Imagine if I said to you, right, Deb, we've agreed that the house is too small. I met a brickie down the pub and he's coming down on Monday and he's going to start building the extension. Rightly so, you grimaced when I said that.
absolutely.
Again, you know, and I obviously know nothing about your home, and please don't take this the wrong way. But you know, you're probably not a builder or an architect or a plumber or an electrician or any of those other people. But you know that there's a lot of steps that we need to go through between deciding that our house is too small and an extension would be useful and bringing a brickie that I met down at the pub.
So
then with software, people bring in the developer who's the brickie, and all of those other people, including the architect, are omitted. And if you think about it, that initial education that I'm talking about is roughly equivalent to what we know about our home because we've lived in it.
yeah.
Now, I'm not suggesting that you need to go on an introductory building course in order to organize this extension. But you don't need it in that instance because I presume you've been living for at least the last month and quite possibly significantly longer in your house. So you've probably got some idea where the pipes are, where the windows are, where might be a good idea to put this extension and where it would be a really bad idea because we'd be encroaching on the neighbor's property or shorting out the electricity or whatever.
So I'm curious because I'm not from your world, but I am learning a lot and I so much appreciate this. But I really conceptually want to understand the solution architect because for me, it's that middleware somehow that is that connectivity between the leadership that should know what they're getting into when they build or expand their own home, but they don't know what the bricklayer or the builder is going to do. What problem does that solution architect do, or that role, when for businesses when they're thinking about changing the functionality that they have in their ERP or CRM system? I'm curious, what role do they fill? I think it's really critical.
It is absolutely critical. And what they fill, what a proper solution architect is, and this is not necessarily somebody that has solution architect printed on a business card. This is somebody that really has the skills. They will know the technology really, really well.
Yes.
And then when they are in conversation with the business leaders, and ideally after the business leaders have done that foundational training, they can design the solution. So in the same way that we've got the architect who would talk to you about why do you need an extension and where do you think it would be good, and are we talking another bedroom, does it need a bathroom, should we put it on the ground floor, should we put it up into the roof, should we whatever. That is what your solution architect does. So it's listening to the requirements, it's knowing the real detail of the technology and how it's put together and its potential and what the configuration, when do you need to go into customization, when do you need code, what is good, which are the areas that are in the, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Customer, I really wouldn't go there. So the idea of, I really like the idea of an east-facing extension, but they can look at the house and they can say, there is no way you can have an east-facing extension because the only way we could do an east-facing extension would short out all the electricity to the rest of the house and would trespass onto your neighbor's property. So it's not going to happen. You can want it what you like, but it's not going to happen.
So you bring up such I don't know, this makes perfect sense to me. Again, you have leadership commitment. We need to do this. It has to solve a business problem. We need amazingly talented developers to help make it happen. But from what I'm getting from you, a lot of businesses don't create as part of their solution a solution architect. So why is it that so many companies skip this step? And what advice would you give them?
Well, the advice I would give them is don't skip the key steps.
So why do they? Why do they skip?
The key steps
Right.
in the overall implementation.
So why is it they skip it?
I think they skip it because they don't realize the importance. So when I talk to you, as I have done this morning or this evening, depending on whose time zone we're referencing, about things like converting the chocolate cake to a carrot cake, you look at me like, but of course, I'm not that stupid. Or the idea of building an extension and using the brickie that I met at the pub last night. And yet, that is what organizations do. I do think part of the problem is they're dealing with vendors, so it is relatively unusual that organizations implement these solutions alone. They will go out to an IT company or a specialist in the area.
An IT company.
And whatever the role of that company might be, and this is going to vary on geography and so on and what your options are, often they will go out to several of those companies. And whether that's done via tender or request for proposal, or even just a sort of a networking type, at our leadership meeting last week, we were discussing, do you know anybody that might be able to help me? But typically you will end up with 2 or 3, maybe even into double figures of vendors bidding in some way, using the word very loosely, but bidding and competing for that work. When you've got that bid situation, obviously everybody who's in it, they're in it to win it. And consequently, they make it sound very simple. They want it to be simple because that's how they will get the bid.
So my question is, knowing that this is a pitfall that you've seen over and over in your experience, depending on the leadership commits, I want to get a carrot cake out of this chocolate cake, but get me some vendors that'll solve it. My question to you is, how do we maybe advise leadership teams to not fall into this pitfall of faster and cheaper? What should they be looking for from these vendors that are bidding for their work? What are some key things you would want to look for to know maybe you're getting a solution architect approach versus simply the implementation of a tool?
I would be looking, and this is coming back to my approach right the way through, but I would be looking for an organization that have laced education throughout the project. So I'm deliberately using the word education, not training, because training is a part of education, but education is much, much bigger. And there's a really funny story about that if you want me to go on to it later on. I would also be looking for people who acknowledge that there are challenges, because if people are making it out to be easy, they are probably glossing over the pitfalls. And when you put a thin veneer over the pitfalls, it looks good, but it doesn't bear weight.
It's the difference between somebody that says, I can sell you a car, it's easy, no problem, I can get you all the features that you want, versus lift up the hood or the boot of the car and say, what's underneath? You'd rather want somebody who would be speaking to you in realistic terms.
Yes.
We're trying to solve your business problem, but we need to do a little hard work in the beginning. Stick with
someone who's honest, really.
Honesty.
Opposed to in it to win it.
There's a difference. There's a human part in how we make a commitment between a customer and a supplier relationship, which that's the gem here. Commitment, honesty, transparency. I'll solve your problem. Let's talk about solving the problem, not about how fast or how cheap can I do it for you, but from a position of communication and partnering versus I'm just going to provide a service to you.
Yes. And part of the education is this understanding about all of those different roles. So instead of lumping everybody who's technical or everybody who knows more about the technology than I do, even having decided that that's the solution we're going to go with, understand the nuances of those different roles. Understand that at different times we will need different skills, rather than this just let's get a developer. And as I said, a developer used in that way is the brickie that we met down at the pub on Monday.
I got to meet this brickie at some point. It sounds really interesting. So I'd love to just take this in another direction. So we've talked philosophically about the perfect customer that has the awareness and insight that they're looking for a solution and a partnership, not just a quick fix and a carrot cake. So I'm getting hungry here. It's getting close to dinner time here. But, I've heard, actually, I think on some of your copy, Jill is known as the CRM fix-it woman. So what is it about the work that you've done that you've been given that name, fix it, versus what could you be doing for organizations? So what do you currently do for organizations in this space?
I do end up doing, and I'd say almost unfortunately, too many almost rescue projects. And this is projects where our friendly Bricky has been allowed to come in far too soon and has built an extension, and it usually is an extension, without doing all of the necessary planning. And typically that goes wrong in a number of different places. Sometimes it goes wrong very soon after go live because we've got far too many data capture fields. So the developer was given maybe a paper form and was told, we need, when we meet with a customer, we need to ask all these questions or find all these things out. So if it was a financial planning organization, for example, yes, we do need to know an awful lot about salary, their household expenses, their budget, how many kids they've got, where are they up to with super. And I'm not a financial planner and we don't need the detail, but there is a lot of information. If any financial planner is to give you worthwhile advice, they need a lot of those questions. I'm not knocking that. However, if that client questionnaire is just handed over to the developer without the solution architect working it out, the chances are you will just get an awful lot of data entry that is not structured in a user-friendly way, and B, a way that makes best use of the product that we've already got. So this is back to shoving carrots into the chocolate cake. Does not make a carrot cake.
I'm in a quandary here because this is just really, I'm boggled by it, and I know this happens. So you obviously are an expert if given the right customer who realizes the time invested upfront in education, commitment of the leadership, understanding the responsibility to define the scope and features before engaging with the developers, or maybe if you're lucky, a solution architect. There's so many companies that are not doing that way. And then fortunately, you've run a business, you've grown a business based on you're the fix-it person. So they pay it once and then they have to pay for it again to fix it. How can we influence companies to think differently rather than do it once, cheap and fast, and then we need consultants to fix it? How we could use your skills so much better at the beginning of the process.
Absolutely.
How can we change this?
I wish I knew. Other than conversations like this and me going out and speaking and introducing the carrot cake, the bricky, the home extension, and I've got lots more stories of a similar nature.
What I find really interesting about this conversation, I love the pictures that you paint. Going to a bakery or putting an extension on your home are so vivid. And when we think about the decisions we make in our personal life, we care about our home. We care about somebody really enjoying that cake as part of a celebration. So we will take the time to maybe get an architect or a trusted builder who understands and can work with us to create the customization we want. We do that in our personal life, but then we check that at the door. We arrive at our businesses, and leaders do not, or have not, in many cases, have that perspective that I care about the outcome of my business. I want to do it right. I want to guide I want to understand what I'm getting myself into, because if you're going to spend so much money and commit to a change, why are we not doing it in a much more
Yeah.
sustainable way, the way we treat our home and our family?
I would love, if I could answer that question, Deb, again, I'd be on the beach in Hawaii, not here early this morning.
Yeah, I'll be joining you there as well as soon as we're over this pandemic. So this conversation is so interesting because, again, we're from different worlds. However, we both employ technology to better the products and services for consumers and customers and have a good experience along the way and make good business decisions. But it still astonishes me that business leaders, heads of organizations will still think in maybe short-term bottom line needs, check the box, got to get this system in place, versus stepping back and realizing, what is the outcome I'm looking for? Consider education as a critical path to this work that we need to do to properly define the requirements of our home or our cake is beside my and I wish you could spread the word so much more, because it just makes good business sense.
It does. And you were talking earlier about the faster, cheaper solution. What I've seen is quite often these initial deployments are not faster and they're not cheaper because so much extra stuff has been added in. I've seen lots and lots of projects where things have been reinvented. So one absolute, if I can give a very specific example, which is from, well, it was actually Microsoft CRM because it was 7 or 8 years ago. And it was a client of mine who absolutely insisted that we created a custom entity for suppliers. This was an organization that dealt in marketing type, merchandise. So they did printing onto pens and cups and all of that stuff. They forced me to create a supplier entity in the database. Whereas what should have happened is suppliers are organizations with whom you have a business relationship. So in the CRM space, they sit in the account along with prospects and clients and a whole heap of other organizations. We can then differentiate whether an organization is a client, a prospect, a supplier, using various filters. There's different ways of doing that, but we can do it fairly trivially. Because this organization insisted, and we ended up having a stand-up argument that I lost on having a custom entity, that was fine, we did it, and superficially it looked okay. But they then wanted things that are inbuilt in the account entity, like the ability to email those suppliers and do a whole range of other stuff. And the custom entity wouldn't do it. And it was yet more work, layering on layering on layering. We then had another issue that Microsoft CRM only allows you to build marketing lists on accounts, contacts, or leads. They wanted them on the supplier. Now, if the suppliers had been in the account entity, that would have been easy. Put them in a custom entity and you can't market to them. And it was just problem after problem after problem, because I'd been bullied into doing something that I thought was a mistake, I knew was a mistake right from the word go.
I'm getting riled up over here because people like you in business have amazing insight and understanding about a proper deployment rooted in education and aligning with leaders that you would think leaders should have understanding. And when you bring to light that so many organizations don't, that is a little scary. However, when I think about you as a professional with amazing talents and deep understanding of the functionality in order to service ultimately the business and then consumers interfacing with these tools. I would love to see you more in front of this with the right leaders to embrace and understand a proper deployment or a proper change or an extension to their business systems absolutely require a start with that top leadership commitment, understanding and being accountable for what they're eventually going to deliver. They are required to have some level of deep understanding of what this is going to do so they can properly lead, implement the right functions and the developers to get to a proper solution. You bring up such, you have so many stories, and you bring up a scary reality that I wish more people would listen to this message and realize there are better ways using your talents, and I'm sure you've got a community of talented people on the proper ways to implement these business solutions.
I agree with you.
You have so many insights. If there were any last thoughts or insights or recommendations to business leaders or potential clients that you would interface with, what would those last thoughts or insights that you might want to share?
I think let's revisit the points that you made earlier, Deb, with let's bring the steps that we would use in our personal life when we're making those decisions, whether it's a relatively big personal investment like an extension, or a relatively small investment like a birthday cake. There are steps that we go through. We allow ourselves to be guided by somebody that knows more about the cakes that they sell or the extensions that they can provide or anything between the two. And yet, as you said, we go into business, we walk towards the CEO, the CIO office where we spend chunks of our time. And all of those questions and common sense that we would use even for the birthday cake, which is what, somewhere between $5 and $50. So not a huge amount by anyone's stand. And we leave all of that at the door and we say, no, I can't afford 2 days of basic foundation education for half a dozen of my people, but I can afford for this project to go off the rails and need major remediation down the track. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me at all.
Jill, you make tremendous amount of sense to me, and I wish your insights and your experience are heard and understood, because people need to listen in business, because I think what you bring to the table is very, very, very helpful. So this has been a great conversation. How would people reach out to you to hear your thoughts and insights and perhaps guide them on a better way?
Surprisingly enough, we exist on the internet, so you will find me on LinkedIn. My full name, as you said earlier, is Jill Walker. We have a website, which is opsis.com.au. I'm in Australia, so opsis.com.au. On there is a blog, and I've got lots and lots and lots of articles where these stories and variations of them get brought up. I've also got several free ebooks, including 7 Essential Steps to Start Your CRM Implementation on the Right Foot, 7 Steps to a Successful Trial of Dynamics, 5 Fundamentals of a Foolproof CRM Implementation. So all of those are available for download, and we're making it easier to find them almost as I speak at the moment. If you actually want a conversation with me, you are more than welcome to pick up the phone, but please check the time difference first. But you can get me on +61 410 449709, or you can email me, jill@opsys.com.au, and I'd love to hear from everybody.
You know, Jill, you are a wealth of knowledge, and I would love to move Jill the Fitbit to Jill the CRM guide, because I know you will guide the right leaders who understand what you believe in, to get really fantastic results. So thank you. You've been a wonderful guest on my show. Thank you so much, and I wish you continued success.
Thank you, Deb.
All right, be well.